Hello, so today we are going to take a look at muscles, and the main goal of the day is to basically just get an understanding of what a muscle is and how in general they work. So the beginning of this chapter, we're actually going to skip. This is on types of movements, things like flexion, extension, adduction, abduction, rotation, circumduction, supination, pronation, elevation, depression, inversion, eversion. If you're somebody who is thinking about a career as like a personal trainer or a physical therapist or a professional bodybuilder, perhaps, these are important to know about. But given that we've lost a week of school and things like that, I'm just going to skip them for this particular semester. So feel free to look them up on your own or just disregard. So what I really want to focus on today is just what is a muscle. So there's several types of muscle, and the first type is skeletal. So chances are good when I say the word muscle, whatever pops into your head is a skeletal muscle. These are things like your biceps, your triceps, your hamstrings, your quadriceps. They cause the movement of bones. So they pull on your bones in ways we'll discuss soon and cause movement there. They're considered voluntary, which means that you get to choose when you move your voluntary muscles. So this is a voluntary movement. I'm choosing to do it. And then they're striated, which means they're made up of these what are called repeating sarcomeres. So you'll notice there's these little lines running down the length of this muscle. This is this cell. That means it's striated. And later we're going to look at this word sarcomeres in more detail. So for now, just sort of note that, and then we'll get back to what exactly a sarcomere is. But it's striated. The next type of muscle is smooth. Smooth muscle is causes movement in internal organs. So an example of this would be pretty much your entire digestive tract. You put food in your mouth, you swallow it, and then you don't really think about it anymore. It just passes through. It goes down your esophagus, your stomach, your small intestine, large intestine. And what you may not realize is that there's actually muscles sort of propelling that food through. And that muscle is called smooth muscle. There's also a smooth muscle in the linings of your blood vessels and other places like that. These are involuntary because obviously you can't control it. Once you swallow that food, it's on its way, and you have no idea when it's going to come out. And then it's not striated. It's you just look at it, it's smooth. So it still has those things called sarcomeres, but you can't see those sort of vertical lines down the middle. So it looks smoother, hence the name smooth. The third type is cardiac muscle. This is found in exactly one place in your body, and that is your heart. And it basically is responsible for your heartbeat, and it has a little bit different structure than the other two types of muscles, so it gets its own category. And it, of course, is voluntary. You can't control your heart rate. If I say, make your heartbeat go up to 180 beats per minute, you can't do that, right? You have to run, exercise, do something like that to make that happen. So it's involuntary, and then of course you can see those lines, so it is considered striated. So take a moment, look at these three pictures and see if you can identify which is skeletal, which is smooth, and which is cardiac. This, by the way, is the back of a leg. And are we ready? 3, 2, here we go. We're clicking. Here's the answers. Boom. Yeah, did you get it? Good. I'm sure you did. I have the utmost confidence in you. Okay. So, so what's a muscle actually look like? So there's some components to a muscle that I want to look at. So first of all, we're going to sort of build up to muscle man here. And it's interesting, whenever you look at figures and diagrams of the muscular system, it's always some super ripped, buff person. But this applies even to scrawny, skinny people. I don't know any of those people myself, but it doesn't matter what kind of physical condition you are in. No matter what, your muscles look like this. So I think maybe this just sells more textbooks when they have really attractive people in their muscle diagrams. I don't know. The very simplest unit that we're going to look at for muscles are what are called myofibrils. And these are these long filaments. You can see there's a bunch of them here. Each of these little circles represents this long filament. It's called a myofibril. These are actually proteins, and they are within an individual muscle cell. So these are smaller than cells, and they consist of two proteins called actin and myosin, which we're going to learn more about later when we talk about sarcomeres. Actin and myosin will come up, so do a lot of foreshadowing today. So these are myofibrils. You can see there's a bunch of them in this structure, which is called a muscle fiber. So a muscle fiber is a long, kind of spaghetti noodle-like cell, and yeah, it's basically a cell. So the cells of muscles are spaghetti noodle-like in shape, and they extend out like that, and then they have these myofibrils inside. Now you'll notice that we can take these and bundle them together into what are called fascicles. And so this fascicle is a bundle of muscle fibers. So take a bunch of spaghetti noodles, bundle them together, and you've got yourself a fascicle. And then if you take that and bundle bundle a bunch of fascicles together, then you have yourself a muscle. So basically, we bundle spaghetti noodles to make a fascicle. We bundle the fascicles to make a muscle. You'll notice that there's connective tissue around this as well. So in this case, surrounding all the spaghetti noodles, we've got connective tissue. So let's look at the connective tissue a little bit now. So fascia is the term we use for connective tissue in muscle. It's basically these sheets of fibrous connective tissue. They attach, they stabilize, and they separate muscles. And so here you can see the muscle, and then you see this fascia here. So these work to help hold the muscle together. They kind of separate the muscles, create a boundary between muscles so that each muscle can work independently of the other ones. And then they provide a lubricated surface so that those muscles can slide past one another as they contract. You may be familiar with fascia because you see it in meat. So if you get a cut of meat, this is actually part of a steak. This is the fascia. And so it's quite likely that if you've ever had a steak, you have cut off the fascia because it doesn't taste very nice. And interestingly, different cuts of meat have different amounts of connective tissue in there. So chuck tends to be a tougher cut than, say, filet mignon. And the reason why is it has a lot more fascia, a lot more of that connective tissue in there. And then this affects how you cook it. If you cook chuck in a slow cooker, that actually will make it taste a lot better. The little collagen fibers in that fascia will slowly unwind into what's called gelatin, which holds moisture, and then you get kind of a tender cut there. If you do that with filet mignon, then it's going to dry out. And so you want to cook this much more quickly. So connective tissue can affect how you cook your meat as well. By the way, do you know that when you eat meat, you're eating muscle? A lot of people don't realize that. So yeah, meat is muscle. When you eat a steak, when you eat hamburger, when you eat a chicken breast, you're eating the muscle. So there's always some kids that don't realize that. Um, Two kind of general categories of fascia. Superficial fascia is basically fat, and it connects skin to your underlying muscles. So if you look at this, this is a cross section of the arm. You can see the humerus, that's the bone there in the middle. What's that? What's that? Did you say yellow bone marrow? Good job. It's like Dora the Explorer. This yellow layer here is the superficial fascia. It's basically fat, and it just holds the skin onto that underlying muscle. Have you ever heard that chicken is healthier if you take the skin off? Well, this is why. It's because if you peel the skin off, this fat comes with it, so it's a little bit lower in fat. But that's also why if you take the skin off, the chicken doesn't taste quite as tasty anymore. And that's because there's less fat in it, and fat tastes good. So it's a little bit moist. I'm going to tell you the secret to having a super ripped, ultra toned body, such as myself. Low body fat is sort of the key to that. And you can see why in this diagram. If you have really low body fat, what happens is there's less superficial fascia, and so then the skin sort of sinks down into the boundaries between these different muscles. And then that sort of highlights the boundaries between the muscles, and you get that ultra cut look. So, yeah, something to strive for, I guess, if you care, but why? Deep fascia, so superficial fascia is between the skin and the muscle. Deep fascia is just the fascia that separates muscles from one another. And so again, this is what's going to um, help the muscles work independently and slide past one another. And again, you can see this in different cuts of meat. You know, these are actually different muscles, and then there's this deep fascia separating them out from each other. And then finally, tendons are another type of connective tissue, and the tendons will connect the fascia of the muscle to the periosteum of the bone. You may recall we learned about bones. The periosteum is that layer of connective tissue around the outside. And so the tendon sort of merges into and becomes that. So I have a helpful model that I like to make at this point that summarizes all that. But since we're doing a screencast right now, I'm going to do a little bit different approach. I'm going to play a video. Let's watch. Students, I'm here with Addie. Hello, Adeline. Hello. And my son Bryson is filming. Say hello, Bryson.
Hello.
And we are going to do a quick model of muscles. Muscles can be a little confusing. Do you know what a cell is, Addie?
Yes.
Yeah, what's a cell?
It's something that makes up your whole body.
It's something that makes up your whole body. We have a board game about cells. What's that game called?
Cytosis.
Cytosis. Great game. Try it out while you're self-isolating. Well, a lot of times cells are drawn as these circular things. What a lot of people don't realize is that cells come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. So we've already seen neurons. Neurons are, do you know what a neuron is?
Awesomeness.
Cell?
It's in this part of your body, the brain. They're in the brain and the spinal cord and your nerves. So neurons are not circular. They have the branches of the axons and dendrites and whatnot. Well, muscles also have kind of a weird shape. Do you know what shape muscle cells have, Addie?
Spaghetti?
Ah, yes, spaghetti!
How'd you ever guess?
Muscles actually are these long, skinny cells. They kind of look like spaghetti noodles. And so this is my model. This would be considered a muscle fiber, which is a single muscle cell. Now, inside of that are even thinner little cylinders called myofibrils. Please don't waste my spaghetti. Called myofibrils. So this muscle fiber is one cell, and it's got little myofibrils inside. And the way your muscles are arranged is lots and lots of these muscle cells are bundled together. And so what I'm going to do, should we include him? So I'm going to take these and wrap them up. And this is connective tissue that kind of bundles these muscle fibers together. And what you have here is a bundle of muscle fibers.
Spaghetti.
A bundle of spaghetti, yes. And so I made several bundles. And so what an actual muscle is you take several bundles of these fibers and you wrap them in even more connective tissue. And so if I wrap this up, thank you for your help. This is what a muscle is. So you bundle up your muscle fibers, and then you bundle the bundles, and this is a muscle. So your muscle is just lots and lots of little spaghetti noodle-like cells all arranged in this way. But here's the even cool part. There's these little connective tissue extensions that kind of come off of these, and these help connect muscle to bone. Any idea what that is? Brian, do you know what?
Huh?
It's not a nindin.
What a bone is?
Oh, tendon.
Or an elevendon. It's a tendon, yes. So these are your tendons. And we talk about how tendons help connect muscle to bone, and you can now see that this saran wrap, it runs through the whole length of this muscle, and then this saran wrap sort of merges into and becomes a structure called the periosteum, which my students learned about earlier this year. And then it wraps around the bone, and that is how tendons connect muscle to bone. And so in our next section, we're going to talk about how muscles contract, and we're going to talk about how little muscles shorten. And you can imagine, all of these spaghetti noodles shortening at once, and that can create quite a bit of force. But we'll talk more about that later. That's all. Thank you. So there you go. So quick recap. Again, the spaghetti noodles are the muscle, or right here, the muscle cells, the spaghetti noodles here, we bundle those up into fascicles, we bundle the fascicles into muscles.